My channel focuses largely on the architecture of yesterday. A lot of it has been demolished. A lot of it does still stand. But if you're just stumbling across my channel, and maybe you're from that specific location that I'm covering, sometimes what I'm saying can be confusing and vague. It really takes a little bit more digging to fully understand the picture of what I'm trying to suggest here on this channel. And I think what I am trying to suggest is that by presenting all of this architectural and infrastructural evidence, that there's more to our historical narrative than what we've been told. And in fact, the history as we know it has been diminished and altered to fit a specific goal for a ruling class, if you will. Maybe not the best word. I think it goes much deeper. So if you are just stumbling across the channel, welcome to the channel and feel free to peruse the videos. Right now we're looking at the amazing metropolis of Chicago, a city I have not really had the courage to dive into yet because there's just so much there. I don't even know how to subdivide and package it. This is the Board of Trade building, featured in my most recent book on demolished buildings here in North America. And a lot of features seem to stick out, and we have a lot of repeats. For instance, this one, they removed the tower, and there seems to be a diminishing that goes on over time before ultimately they get rid of these buildings. But you can see here the obscenely high ceilings, the impossible interior finish, especially for the time period we're told and the people of the time. So there's something wrong with the narrative is the general message of the channel. Why am I showing you Chicago? Well, this is not a video on Chicago. We're not there yet. But we're close. We're going to be looking at Elgin, Illinois. And thank you, Steph, for pointing me in that direction. And thanks for being here. And before we get to the file of visual evidence, I like to look at the population demographics. You can see here in the modern day we're just over 100,000. In Elgin, we turn the clocks back to the turn of the 20th century, we're just over 20,000 people. And most of the architecture we're looking will be said to have been built in this time period here, and among these decades between 1880 and 1920. Seems to be the sweet spot for construction, according to the new historical narrative. And we start with a bird's eye view of Elgin from 1880, at a time when there's just about 9,000 people living there. You can see here how well developed it is, how well laid out everything seems to be, despite the fact that it's such a small city. And you've also got some very large structures, and we will be looking at both of these moving forward. Also note the bridge infrastructure in place at that early time period. Another thing to key in on in these locations is the Victorian era mansions that still remain in Elgin. Seems to have a good handful of those left, and I did dig into it a bit and found that many of these have been demolished, but some of them are still there and preserved, and they're quite lovely, and of course have been maintained in many cases. This is just to illustrate the streetcar narrative, which seems to repeat no matter where we look. My initial impression of streetcars was that it was only really in a handful of select cities, and then I got into this research and I discovered that these things existed everywhere. Another thing that seems to exist almost everywhere are asylums. Here we're looking at the Elgin Asylum. Let's dig a little deeper into this character, Stephen V. Shipman. You can see the timeline on the build for the Elgin Asylum, 1869 to 72. So this gentleman is responsible for designing a good handful of asylums. We'll go through them right now. So there's one also in Anna, Illinois, built at the same time period by the same gentleman, or designed by the same gentleman. So these are going up almost consecutively, or at the same time, if you will. And it gets a little bit muddy because he's also got one in Oshkosh going up right around the same time. This visual seems to be used for several different asylums. You can see the fountain here. At a time before plumbing, or in the early days of plumbing, they had no problem putting up fountains, I guess. It seems to be the same visual they're using here for Mendota, Wisconsin. This one dating back a little further, but I don't... Here, let's look at this one again. It looks to be the same one, but I'm sure there were two asylums, and there's probably some mislabeling going on here. Another one in Independence, Iowa, from Mr. Shipman. Massive, same time period. So this seems like lazy narrative to me, where they're just slapping a single gentleman's name on a half a dozen asylums, basically. Back to Elgin, though. This is the annex buildings, or these are the annex buildings of the asylum. There's a postcard look at them. Multi-storied aspect, massive brick structures. These are going up everywhere now. So as you compile the evidence from location to location, you start to realize there just weren't enough people. There weren't enough brick factories. There wasn't enough transportation to get these done in the time frames we're told. So you have to assume at some point that there's something wrong with the historical narrative. This, again, I've mentioned mislabeling. I think this is that same asylum that they're attributing to two other locations. This postcard is telling us this is in Elgin. So it gets a little confusing, a little sloppy, and admittedly so when you look into the narrative, that there's a sloppy aspect. They don't really know when you turn the clocks back that far, and that vagueness helps to serve the uncertainty of the past, and then you just fall back on what we're told by the experts. And I just finished a video on Traverse City, Michigan, and there were some aspects of both these cities that seem to repeat. Here's another one. You have these underground mausoleum type structures in the local cemeteries. Something to keep an eye on as you're doing your own research. Now this one I want to look at a little bit closer. So you see the prominent streetcars here. So I dug into this street here. I believe it's Chicago Avenue. And I was looking for these structures here, and I could not find for the life of me what these domes and these poles that reach up into the ether. They'll tell us they were flagpoles. I think there was function involved, but no evidence of what the designation for these structures were. So if you can find it, if you know anything more about Elgin, let me know in the comments below. And I did dig, and I did find a few obscure structures for you. Here's Chicago Street, not Avenue. Apologies. You're seeing some similarities here. You see the City Hall here. We'll take a close look at that as well. All but erased from history, this one as well. Another street view, very wide streets. I suspect some of the boulevards covering up the old tracks in many locations. I think there was a concerted effort to remove the streetcar. I know there was a concerted effort to remove the streetcar evidence in many locations. The brick paved streets. These are all part of old world infrastructure. I don't believe it was something that popped up quickly and left quickly. That seems like fiction to me. Let's look at this City Hall. Not a lot of evidence, like I said. You can see there, this is a one-year wonder, 1893. Less than 20,000 people living in Elgin, but they have the resources to build this City Hall. Eventually sees the wrecking ball in 1969. And what happens to it over time? Not a lot of visual evidence. Here's one. Just like I mentioned in the intro, they remove the tower, they remove evidence of all the dormers you can see have been removed at this point. So at the point of its demolition, or close to, it's not really something that catches your eye like it once did. It's almost like they're prepping these things for demolition by diminishing them. And there's another building there that I could not find. Sometimes difficult with these smaller locations. There's not a lot of evidence. Here we have the D.C. Cook Mansion. Nice looking structure, and affiliated with the DC Cook Publishing Company. There's several large businesses in industry in Elgin, as we'll see moving forward as well. And I mentioned the mansion, so I thought I'd show you a couple. This one, well maintained, beautiful, really eye-catching. You can imagine walking your dog along the sidewalk and stopping, letting your dog do its business, and taking this one in. It's wonderful. This one starts as the Elgin Academy. I don't believe it has that designation now. It might be a museum. Still stands and well maintained. Well built structure. I like to throw these ones in as well. There's a strange period in there between the two WWs where they were shooting these buildings up in no time flat. This one 1928, 14 months to build this multi-storied structure. You can tell it's got a very solid base. It just seems like a very short time frame. And just a quick peek at it before we move forward. I'm not saying it's not possible to have built that at the time, but there's something more to the story in the way that they were doing things that we're not getting. And I think that was erased after the WW2 event in our historical timeline. And all the mysteries that surround that seem to be in question a lot these days. This is the old fire barn, celebrated in town, well maintained, nice looking structure. Here we have a fire department with the gentlemen with their horses and the multi-storied structures behind them. The architecture not really matching, again, the technology of the time. First Congregational Church built in 1889 in 1 year. Again, this 1 year narrative seems to be popping up wherever I look. Now, when they tell us 1 year, they're telling us it's from the laying of the cornerstone. Sometimes it will say that, implying that all the excavation work was done, but it gets sloppy again when they throw that in the narrative, because they'll say the plans were being drawn up 6 months before the laying of the cornerstone. So how much time was allowed for excavation work on these structures? And we find that they go well into the lower reaches of the ground in many cases. You can see here the basement windows, so it's a narrative that tends to repeat, and there's a lot of mystery involved. This one succumbs to a tornado in the 20s. I don't have the year here. March 28th. It's definitely happened in the 20s. And this was the pipe organ, a massive pipe organ in the First Congregational Church. I remember this whole building built in 1 year, we're told, in 1889. Does that include the pipe organ as well? And you can see the decoration around it. So it's not just this boxy thing. It's the interior as well. And obviously it still stands, so I should clarify it was damaged in the tornado, the pipe organ destroyed, and there it is in the modern day. Another church, First Church of the Evangelical Association, built 1893 in 1 year, demolished in 1923, so that's probably the tornado year, because I believe this was also damaged beyond repair in that tornado. First Methodist Church, this is a bit of narrative for you. This is the First Methodist Church, and this is what they'll always do. They'll say it started humbly, and then it moved on to this structure, 1866. There's the tornado again. 1920. So a little bit vague on the year of the tornado, but and these are taken from historical accounts, right? So even the historical accounts seem to contradict as far as accuracy goes. And then they settle on the modern First Methodist. First Universalist, a little castle style structure on a corner here, 1892. So these are all going up in and around the same time. You can imagine how busy that would have looked in the 1890s to see all these stone and brick structures going up everywhere. If you were a brick mason at the time, you would have had the pick of where you wanted to work. And early First Universalist. There's the one that they'll say was built after that one, and this one still stands and looking quite old. So Fountain Square, and I think this was the building I mentioned in the earlier photograph that I couldn't actually find the designation. Again, anyone from the area knows any more about Elgin, let me know what this one was. Would love to know. We have an old high school hiding behind the trees in this postcard, built in 1870. There's 5,000 people living there in 1870. Let's take a closer look. It's demolished in the 19-teens before the tornado gets to demolish it. They got rid of it anyway. A lot of these towns will have high schools that look a lot like this, that are just a ghost in the historical narrative. That you'd have to really pick at it to find any sort of information on it. Elgin fitting that bill as well. I've done so many cities now, you can see the pattern repeat from location to location. This is the Holy Trinity. I suspect there was a tower on top of here, but couldn't find any visual evidence. It still stands. Bit of a grainy picture just to show you. So we have the Hotel Fosgate, also known as the Jennings Hotel. You can see here. Again, the heavily decorated upper reaches. Some strangeness too with the sidewalks down here. I don't think this is wood on the top here. This looks to be about a 6-inch layer of something. Interesting because you can see the railings here going down to the lower locations. So there's something strange here with the elevation change, something we see very often in these videos. This is the Leitner Brothers building. You can imagine if all of these still stood and were well maintained, you would have a downtown looking like a Christmas tree, basically, with all these decorations. Lord's Park with its fountains. You can see here on the right evidence of the manor. There it is in the background. The pavilion, sorry. It still stands. Nice looking place to go, Lord's Park. I'll skip past this, but I needed to include it. This presence seems to be everywhere as well. And this one, not a fantastic looking building, although the pediments, it's got a bit of decoration though. But just wanted to show you that their presence is being felt in Elgin, of course. Another wonderful looking house. I wouldn't quite call that a mansion, but the turret, very difficult to construct in such a manner. Here we have the National House. This one built a very early time period, 1866-67. Less than 5,000 people living there. This is massive. No, this is built supposedly as part of the watch factory, the watch works we'll see toward the end of the video. They got rid of this one in the 1930s. A city of 35,000 people in the 30s, and they got rid of this massive building. You have to wonder why. You'd think such a large, well-built structure would come in handy in a town that's growing at that time period, especially in the 30s, when well, they'll probably say it was part of the Public Works Association to Make Work project, where they're knocking down buildings and building new ones, keeping people busy, trying to get the economy going, the FDR plan. Another part of the historical narrative. All of these things seem to flow into each other. The New Deal, the urban renewal projects. It seems when you connect those dots, you start to see that timeline for what it is. It seems to be a concerted effort to erase a lot of this. The old post office, could not find much on this as well, not even a build date, but they did get rid of it in the 60s. Anytime you see a 60s demolition, 70s demolition, it's urban renewal. Modern post office looks like this, just for contrast's sake. Here's the old library, Gale Borden Public Library, and just to show you, you can see the decorative elements, even just the simple building. They had to add all that flair. Nothing really being built for the sake of expedience, for function. There's so much form involved. The Rest Haven Sanitarium, just a grainy picture of the structure itself. The Sells Shoe Factory, this is a massive structure built in 1891. Remember 1890, 17,000 people living in Elgin. And you've seen how many churches were going up in and around that same time period. Too much construction, too few people. Technology in its infancy. Even in the modern day, we wouldn't undertake such ambitious plans. And a lot of these old hospitals as well, this is the Sherman Hospital, have been overhauled. You can see here the renovations that have gone on, but it looks like they saved some of the fountain work here in the courtyard. So not all of it gone, but most of it has been erased from our view, if you will. St. John's Evangelical Lutheran Church still stands. Another hospital, St. Joseph's Hospital. So all these asylums, hospitals, sanitariums, so much attention to our health at that time period. And how healthy were we really? I suspect there's a lot more going on with that element of society, if you will. And I don't think it was for the benefit of mankind, personally. Here is that same hospital that's been built on. You can see the difference in architecture here. Original structure, and then addition next door to it. St. Mary's Catholic, again, flat top. I suspect probably once had a tower. 1896 to 99. Why did it take them 3 years to build this? And all these other ones we're seeing were only 1 year. Got a little lazy, I think, when they were doing this one. Certainly looks like something's missing, though. Beautiful looking church. We certainly don't do this in the modern day, but it was obviously, according to the narrative, widespread everywhere at the time. Here's a good example of what happens to these buildings when they're not maintained and when they want to phase them out. You have the Turner Hall here, and you have it here in the modern day. You can see what's happened. It's been leveled right across the top here. Boarded up here, looks like it's slated for demolition. It obviously was a beautiful structure. They also added on this little bit here on the side. The brick paved streets obviously long gone. So just a good illustration of what happens over time to these structures. And we're really just getting a whisper of what once was. Alright, come to close to the end of the file here. Here's the watch factory. This one's built in 1866. Again, at a time when there's less than 5,000 people, and they decide to swoop into Elgin and build a massive watchmaking factory. Such a lucrative business. Demolished in the 60s, obviously, urban renewal taking its toll. And we'll take a couple looks at this. There's the watch tower. Massive, massive structure. And the massive stacks as well. You see this a lot here. We have a multifaceted stack. Here's cylindrical. They have visual evidence of the demolition of the watchtower, almost like was celebrated at the time, which I find interesting in the 60s to get rid of that. Well, you can see how prominent this structure was in Elgin, with all of the traffic outside, brick paved streets again. You wonder, right? And then what happens usually after these big demolitions happen? Urban renewal takes out the behemoths, and then you have the historical societies pop up and say, "Don't demolish these." And they're like, "Well, we already did. They're already gone." So they decide to preserve these things after they get rid of them. I think it's kind of interesting. The massive structure, though, massive complex, and there it is near the end. You can see the modern vehicles just before the wrecking ball. So that's a look at Elgin, Illinois. We finished with a YWCA here on the right. Couldn't find a YMCA. If you have any locations you'd like me to look at, of course, put them in the comments below. If you really want me to get to it as soon as possible, consider making a donation to the channel. And thanks for being here.
This has been an old world exploration. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and comment. I believe we are in the process of remembering who we really are and casting off the shackles of illusion. Until next time.